always the start of the video that's the most important. The Sony a7C Mark II has one big video problem, and that is, for a full frame camera, you cannot actually shoot 4K 60p in full frame mode. Arguably a very important frame rate for a lot of us video creators. So let's say, for example, you're using the brand new Sony 16-35G Master II, a proper ultra-wide angle full frame lens. You get the full 16-35 in any of the other 4K modes. But when you're trying to film in 4K 60p, the camera will force us into a 1.5 times crop, effectively making this lens a 24 to 50mm equivalent field of view. Not a very ultra-wide angle lens anymore now, is it? So some of us saw this coming, right? Since the a7C Mark II uses the same sensor as the popular a7 IV. But instead of complaining about it again, we're gonna be doing something about it. And our answer to this video problem lies in APS-C lenses, which we'll be sharing 5 of. Oh, 5. So the first on this list is this tiny Laowa 9mm f2.8, which, taking the crop factor math into consideration, gives us a 13.5mm full frame equivalent field of view. And this is gonna be the widest of the bunch that I'll be recommending. Now, this is a manual focus only lens, and it does have some vignetting, but it's near zero distortion, which makes this an absolute gem for real estate and architecture. But if autofocus is important to you, then keep on listening. Because number 2 on this list is the Sony 11mm f1.8, and this is the one that I'm gonna recommend to everyone out there. It's incredibly light, super small, and it gives us a 16.5mm full frame equivalent. Not as wide as the Laowa, but we're getting better optics and autofocus. And more importantly, that sweet f1.8 aperture, making it incredibly handy in low light. For the travel series we've been producing, Travel Gone Vong, we use this lens heavily both on an APS-C and full frame camera on a gimbal, and I can't recommend it enough. And for $550 brand new, it's a steal. Or you can save even more money by shopping it used from KEH Camera. In fact, the other 2 lenses that I'm about to recommend on this list are also severely discounted on KEH Camera, while supplies last, which we'll get into after our word from our lovely sponsor. KEH Camera is a reputable site to shop pre-owned camera gear from. Everything that comes through their way gets thoroughly inspected and all backed by that 180-day warranty should something go wrong, or 21 days to return if you end up not liking it. I mean, hey, I make all these recommendations, but until you try it for yourself, you never know. They also offer additional product protection in partnership with Extend. To learn more, check out my link down below to get 5% off your next purchase or 5% more when you decide to sell. Thanks for listening, and thank you KEH for sponsoring this helpful guide. Now, let's review what the final 3 lenses are. Now, these are gonna be our versatile ultra-wide angle zoom options, and number 3 on this list is a bit of an OG, the Sony 10-18mm f4. This is a 15 to 27mm full frame equivalent field of view, but unlike the first 2 primes, this actually has built-in lens stabilization. Not that lens stabilization really matters, we'll talk more why in just a bit, but there's actually a well-known secret that you can use this lens in full frame mode, because unlike most APS-C lenses on full frame cameras, you can actually zoom out the vignetting at around 13mm, making this incredibly viable in full frame 4K 24 and 4K 30p. Really solid option if you can pick this up for dirt cheap. But we do have an update to this lens. Sort of. This is the Sony 10-20mm f4G. Not only does this have 2 extra millimeter on the back end, but it also has updated optics, so the image quality, especially in the corners, are gonna look much better than its predecessor. However, the next factor of this lens can be considered a deal breaker, and that is the power zoom capability. So that means all the zooming is done electronically and internally. Personally, I'm not a fan of power zoom. The electronic zooming just feels weird to me. But the advantage that others enjoy is the consistent zoom speed. And the fact that this does internal zooming means when you're using it on a gimbal, it won't affect the balance much when you're going from 10 to 20mm. Not that it matters anyway because this lens is so small. However, this lens did get a little flack when it first came out because the version 1 of this has the built-in lens stabilization and this version 2 here does not, which sucks if you're using this with an APS-C camera with no in-body image stabilization. In fact, 80% of the lenses here on this list do not have optical steady shot. However, since this video focuses on the a7C Mark II and the a7 Mark IV, we have in-body image stabilization. And in fact, the a7C Mark II has 7-step in-body image stabilization, giving us way more stability when hand-holding our shots. Nice. Now, if you're sitting there being like, oh hell no, Jason, I hate f4 lenses. Well then, you can get out. I'm serious. Open the door, get out. Because what you're gonna find out there is a Tamron 11 to 20mm f2.8 waiting for you outside. This is the final lens on our list, and it's an incredibly solid one as well, with that constant f2.8 aperture while giving us that 16.5 to 30mm full frame equivalent field of view. It is a bit heavier out of all the options that we've recommended so far, but for $700 and that juicy f2.8 aperture, it's gonna be super enticing to a lot of folks, and it's what I would recommend to anyone who's looking for an ultra-wide angle zoom option. Hey, if you want a more in-depth review of the a7C Mark II or the a7 Mark IV, check out the link here on the screen. Use code JVSHOP at KEH if you plan on saving some money. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.